Hello and welcome to the Point Forward Podcast Post-Mortem Edition. The Milwaukee Bucks are done for the season. You know this. They lose to the Indiana Pacers in a crusher of Game 5. They lose that series 4-1. There's so much to discuss about the future of the Milwaukee Bucks, and I'm joined by the one guy who can do it, Jim Owczarski, Bucks beat reporter for the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. He was in Indiana watching the carnage unfold. Although I don't know if the ceiling was kind of low. So I guess it's not maybe that level of heartbreak, but in the moment, Jim, I was like, are you kidding me? They were up 7 points with 40 seconds left. How did they lose that game? Jim, we'll start with that game because we've got so much to discuss, but I don't know. What are your takeaways from that game? It's going to fade in memory because it was just a Game 5, but oh my gosh, Jim, how did that happen?
Yeah, look, I give the Bucks credit for playing with, arguably the intensity and the lineup that they should have had from Game 1.
Yes.
They showed up
40 minutes each for all 5 of those guys, so it was intense, that lineup.
Yeah,
but anyway.
It definitely was the winner go home emphasis there, and I doubt it could have been replicated much further beyond that. But in the game they were in, to take a lead, end of fourth, to lose it, to take that lead end of overtime and lose it. Look, on one hand, you have to credit AJ Green, Gary Trent Jr., Giannis Antetokounmpo for making the baskets that they did to get them in those spots, and Kevin Porter and Bobby Portis for the defense, right? And then in the clutchest of clutch times, JR, breakdowns, right? Giannis.
Yep.
You speaking of overtime, Giannis admitted that he blew his assignment on Andrew Nembhard. And Nembhard pulled up from 33 feet and did it. Like, that's a low percentage shot, but he made it.
Totally.
But Giannis admitted he broke down, right? The AJ Green foul on Tyrese Halliburton that the league later says, it should have been a foul.
Thanks, league.
Okay. AJ owned that, but the mistake was beforehand when Doc Rivers said they had a foul to give. They did not take the foul immediately. So, and then you have Gary Trent on the other side, terrible, like hero ball, 8 of 9 from 3 in fourth quarter and overtime, and tries a jump pass to AJ Green that's intercepted, and the basketball equivalent of Bill Buckner, right? Like,
pain. The
ball's coming to him, it's low, but as he said after the game, and credit to Gary for sticking around and talking to us to say, I got to catch it, And conversely, Tyrese Halliburton took a star turn that no one will remember because of what happened after the fact. But Tyrese got to the rim, right, and made all those layups and made the free throws. So very, very disappointing for the Bucks to have not reached the Game 6, JR. What would have happened beyond that? Probably, the math said they would have lost the series. But again, you always want to get home, right, and a chance to flip that pressure. And I think they could have done that. But here we are. Now it's another offseason.
I guess I feel Gary Trent, he fumbled the ball. It's, like one of those things that could happen to, I guess, just about any random person. It's crazy that it happened. But I also think the Bucks needed Gary Trent to be scoring almost 40 points a game for them to even be in that contest. Like, that's just not sustainable stuff. So I feel like maybe this was, I thought they were going to win, of course, in that moment, but I don't know if I felt like there was any chance of them moving forward. There was a chance. We'll touch real quickly on what happened after the game with John Halliburton coming onto the floor, talking to Giannis. There's been obviously a lot of discourse around that, and it doesn't sound like he's going to be able to attend more playoff games, which I think is kind of interesting. I thought that was maybe not what I expected. Giannis, again, giving this philosopher side of him that I think is, we do not take it for granted. I think it is remarked upon in the moment, but it is so astounding to see him speak so, introspectively, beautifully on topics like this. But I know you were there for that. So just give me some thoughts if you have them on that particular altercation, and if it caught your attention any certain way.
I mean, look, whatever the relationship between a fan, and that's what John Halliburton is, and a player can't go on the court, should not talk to a player on an opposing team, regardless of the circumstance or the happenstance or sight lines or whatever it may be. Once you're on the court, you're kind of in their world. And so, yeah, and Giannis clearly, look, he is not afraid to speak his opinion in the moment. Chris Paul saw that earlier in San Antonio. We've seen that at times, right, with Giannis. In terms of John Halliburton and the Pacers sort of agreeing to keep him away, I think that just got out in front of the league, JR, getting involved, because I don't think anybody wanted that. Like the NFL situation where they fined the Falcons and a coach over $250 million for the son's actions of a family member, right? And so I don't think the NBA wanted to be in that situation. So I think the Pacers and the Halliburtons took that, right? And it's probably the right thing, because I just think look, JR, all the Giannis trade goofiness is going and has gone, but if anything could have like muted that, it was that post game. Like driving from Indianapolis to Milwaukee and listening to Indianapolis talk radio and then national sports talk radio, and then even into Chicago, Milwaukee, like that was the topic of conversation the whole next day. It wasn't Tyrese Halliburton having arguably his best postseason moment. It wasn't what's going to happen to Giannis. It wasn't whatever. It was that. And, which is obviously no league wants that. The Halliburtons clearly didn't want that. And so that was, I think, probably the right move regarding his presence at future games this playoff. And, I think it saved the league a little bit of headache from having to adjudicate that themselves, to be honest.
Yeah. Maybe I'm crazy. I feel kind of bad for him, John Halliburton. I think he deserved some level of, I was looking for the word punishment. I don't know. But also I think he just kind of got caught in a situation. I'm sure he's been on the floor before after games. Shaquille O'Neal was trying to make that point. I don't know if that's true or not, but it wouldn't surprise me. They are kind of mini celebrities in Indiana. Pacers, lore is the wrong word, but people know who his parents are. He's the star of the team, or one of the stars of the team. And, he just got himself in the wrong, he shouldn't have even made eye contact with Giannis, but I don't know if that's what happened. Like maybe that happened and it just kind of like got a little further. I don't know. And it was mostly settled with Giannis, speaking as he did, being, I think, rightfully upset, but then also saying, okay, we're in a good place at the end of this. Apologies abound. I didn't think he was going to get banned from watching his kid play the rest of this postseason, but like, they'll do it differently next time. That's for sure. And I think it ultimately dies here, since it seems like everybody is saying the right things. We have a lot more Giannis to talk about. And you've written a lot at jsonline.com about what's ahead for the Bucks. The Bucks are going to have a very different looking team next year. We know Damian Lillard won't be available right at the outset. You've written about the contracts. There are not many players under contract. There are a couple big contract decisions to be made. Bobby Portis is a big one, an opt-out, opt-in situation. In general, there are websites out there right now. Websites is pejorative, but like I'm saying it pejoratively. They're trying to get at Giannis anywhere else other than Milwaukee. They're trying to trade this man, a player who has said repeatedly, who has signed 2 extensions and has said repeatedly he wants to stay. Now, I get it. Circumstances have changed. Next year's team is not going to be championship caliber. This is a different environment. I totally acknowledge that. I just don't, first of all, think anything happens. If Giannis wants to stay, he will stay. And if he wants to go, he will go. I don't think anything happens separate from his wishes. But yet there are people saying, well, you got to get ahead of it too.
We can quibble on that also, JR, but go ahead.
I'm happy to quibble. I guess what is,
so yeah, let's start. Well, we'll just stop you right there, because this is something before we get into wish casting. I'll say this. I think it's a little bit foolish to just assume that any player who requests a trade from Wes Edens and Jimmy and D Haslam will just find that ownership capitulates. I'm not going to, I'm just saying, then I don't think the NBA, ownership is rarely covered. Let's put it that way, unless they wish to be, like Steve Ballmer, Joe Lacob, Jimmy Dolan in a weird way. But weird. Generally speaking, like
Dan Gilbert, when he was
Jeannie Buss, there's a handful. Wes Edens and Jimmy and D Haslam are not owners that wish to be covered. That said, there are track records for both with the Bucks and their other pro teams. So even if a player wants to say quietly, loudly, I would like to take my services elsewhere, I think, again, Jay, I'll just leave it at that. I think it's foolish for anyone to think ownership of this team would just say, okay. Might be more likely to say, that's fine, we'll see you in training camp. I mean, I'm not reporting anything. I'm just saying I think it's not just a player and a team and dreams and wishes and hopes and thoughts and prayers from all around the league and national media types. Like, it's not just that and then some other team and assets and things. Like, there's ownership, there's the business of basketball. Okay. And Giannis Antetokounmpo is great business. And so that's cold. It's
extremely,
but it's facts. And so I'll stop you with the, if he wants to go, he wants to go. I'll slow the roll. I won't stop it. I'll slow the roll on that because there are other people involved in that decision that I'm not sure would just be like, yeah, that sounds good.
Well, and now I'm jumping ahead in time here to a theoretical scenario, but I understand what FU money means, but Wes Edens and Jimmy Haslam will be remembered a completely different way. If Giannis says, I would like to be traded, and we go through a whole year or plus of him being in Milwaukee, wanting to be traded, and them saying, you know what? No, you're under contract. They will not be beloved in Milwaukee. They will be remembered as the owners who kept Giannis. They will not be remembered as championship owners. They will be remembered as the owners.
Now let's go forward. This moves into the basketball part of it. That's hilarious you say that, JR, because why would, and I definitely am not like an ownership guy. I tend to be pro-labor. I am labor. I tend to be pro-labor on a broader sense. But this does move into so first of all, I don't think Bucks fans are going to be mad that Giannis keeps playing in Milwaukee. First of all, that's a misnomer. Because he's the first or second best player in the world. There's a reason that arena is sold out every night, right? And it's not because of who owns the team or who runs the team. But this goes into the basketball part, JR, where ownership knows, John Horst knows, and even Giannis knows. And this is the thing I think is lost in this sort of, again, the wish casting and the hopes and dreams and prayers of everyone else. Yeah, there's this weird thought that he can't win in Milwaukee, yet he has already won in Milwaukee. Mm-hmm. And yet it's like, well, now he can't win a second title in Milwaukee. So the goalposts have moved.
Oh, and they'll move again.
So now and I'm just saying, I'm going to crawl into his head a little bit. And it's not and I'm not doing this as sort of like a thought exercise. Like, I think if you were to read all of his things he has said in 5 years, JR, he wants to win in Milwaukee again. He believes he can. He's the first or second best player in the world. His presence alone makes a team a championship contender. No, is that not the hopes and dreams and wishes and thoughts and prayers of everyone else in the league? Well, if we get Giannis, we can win.
Sure.
Yet somehow the place he's already won cannot win with, like, it's such a weird bit of mental gymnastics and language exercises, JR, of like the Bucks have as good a chance to win with him as nearly anyone else. And while we can get into, taxes and aprons and draft capital and all that kind of stuff, at the end of the day, like, you are better positioned to win the ultimate goal with that guy than without. Yes. And that's what everyone else is saying. Well, if we get that guy, we can win. Well, the Bucks already have that guy. So that's why I come in with ownership saying, well, how does this make us better in business, in basketball, in whatever? And I wholeheartedly disagree with you, JR. Like, first of all, I don't think Giannis Antetokounmpo would make a loud, like, it flies in the face of everything he's actually about.
I agree with you. You're right.
Image is about. So
Right.
even if there's this quiet sort of like behind the scenes, no one leaks. There's no leaks. It doesn't matter. Like Kevin Durant, I'll use this example. Kevin Durant went to Joe Tsai in Brooklyn and said, "I want to be traded," and Joe Tsai said, "Great, see you in camp." And Kevin Durant had to play a whole other year in Brooklyn. He didn't give a I almost swore. He didn't care. He's a hooper. Kevin Durant isn't sitting out. He made his wishes though. He's like, all right, let's rock with it. And like, so even if there was this thought, which I don't even think there is, to be honest. But it's a lot of this is just sort of like, it's fodder and it's easy stuff to talk about. But I think on a local level, we can dig into like the actual mechanics of this, JR, and it goes well beyond just, the Bucks lost in the first round. I think it's sort of all those things. It's ownership. It's the fact that he already is a walking contender. And so now it's up to John Horst to figure out the roster. And look, we can talk about that and the fact they've lost 3 years in a row and the things that he's done that have or have not worked. But clearly Giannis has been more than fine with what they've been doing. You know what I mean? And I'm very, very sure he's more than fine with where they're going in the near term. So, yeah.
The one part I disagree with you is thinking that this is a championship team just because they have Giannis, because they had Giannis in this series and they weren't going to win a championship. And obviously that's because of injury, but they needed Damian Lillard to make this an even better championship situation. That Giannis wasn't enough and they won't win the championship next year, barring a miracle. And, I don't think it's out there, honestly, even though they'll have Giannis. Now, what I of course agree with is, why would you give up one of the charitably three best players in basketball? Could easily be 2 or 1, and you're going to get worse no matter what the deal is, no matter how many draft picks you get from a team that's going to be picking in the 20s because they now have Giannis. You will be getting worse when you trade Giannis Antetokounmpo. So either you are a team that is a mid-level playoff team with Giannis, or you're a team that's in a 6-year valley. Detroit and San Antonio are 2 examples. They have drafted very well, I think. I mean, San Antonio got Victor Wembanyama, so like by accident they drafted well. Detroit's had a bunch of top 10 picks. They've gotten Cade Cunningham. They've gotten some good players, and they've had a nice breakthrough year. And they still weren't as good as the Bucks after 6 years of drafting in the top 5. They're doing it right. The Spurs also drafted Stephen Castle. I mean, it's a rookie, so like that we haven't really seen his story unfold. But even the teams that are hitting on the draft, it's a long journey, crazy long journey.
Very. I mean, like again, like it's cute, like the idea of like adding picks and doing things like this is not football.
No, not at all.
Like the last time the Spurs okay, you said championship contender. Whose definition are we talking about here? Like,
well, mine.
Contender, competitive, chance to win. That definition doesn't line up with everyone we're talking about. There are some teams, like it's the right thing to say publicly. We want to win a championship. The reality of that is you're not going to win a championship. Like the Bucks have won one of the last 7. I think there's going to be a new champion this year, JR, and perhaps 2 new finalist teams. So in the last 8 years, you've got 15 different finalists or 14 different finalists and 8 different champions. Like that's insane. The goal, like the league, so we talk about goalposts moving, the league and the players agreed to this, has pushed that. Like the definition of championship contenders has drastically changed. We are almost a decade into this. So what is contending? What is competitive? The Bucks won 48 games this year, JR. They won 49 games last year. And I would argue that if Damian Lillard doesn't miss 19 games and if Giannis doesn't miss 14 games, they win 50 plus. I don't remember what their missed games total were last year, but I would say the same thing. They were well on like 54 win pace, right? Before Giannis got hurt. Like that's a lot of winning. That's contending. And I understand the end result. I understand injuries are frustrating, but in the locker room, that's contending. That's belief. They can go as far as they possibly can. And I understand, again, it's about the end result. But as Giannis has said over and over again, and he said it again after the Pacers game, he expects nothing to be handed to him. He expects nothing to be easy, and stuff happens, right? Paraphrasing. So, and you mentioned draft picks that last time. So if we're going to talk about like deep playoff runs as contention, the Spurs have not been relevant in that way since 2016-17.
Right.
The Pistons have not been relevant in that way since before that.
Mm-hmm.
And look, maybe people like to look at the Houston thing with James Harden and that sort of those machinations. That's 5 years, 6 years. And they weren't even like a finalist, but like I think they went to a finals, right? Eastern or Western Conference Finals, but whatever. Like no one remembers. That's the whole point.
Right.
And so they didn't get there. Same thing with Oklahoma City. They got to a final. They got to a West final, and then everybody left. And it took how long again for them to be? And this group, as we record this, has yet to get out of a second round. So again, like, yeah, JR, it's the end result. They didn't reach their stated goal. But I think, again, the internal local idea of competitive contender is far different than what everyone else is projecting upon them. Because I guarantee you, I've been in this locker room the last 2 years, JR. I guarantee you that these last two iterations of the Bucks have felt they could win a championship in that locker room. 100%.
Okay.
Like what other definition of contending is there other than the people who are actually trying to do the thing? So I'll be objective and realize all this other stuff, but again, I think that gets lost among people who aren't around and who want a storyline that fit whatever it is that they like. And there's so much more to this, JR, beyond just this, but I think the contending part, the competitive part is lost because of the end result. And it's fair to a degree because it is, but I tell you right now, these Bucks teams have felt every bit like they can win a championship. And I think in the end, that's what matters. And that's what matters to Giannis.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really interesting. Great table setting. Ultimately, the question that I have is what percentage chance you think that Giannis is back next year? I know you think it's very high. I'm sure the average person thinks it's maybe 50%. I'm guessing you think it's more like 95. I mean, what is the chance that he goes somewhere else?
Yeah, I mean, he's a human and like weird stuff happens. So it's like it's like what I said when we talk about Dame Lillard, right? With the blood clot, where I was sitting there like, there's no way he plays. But you got to leave for the chance of the medical miracle.
You're right,
and look,
right.
medical miracle happened. That was like a great thing for Dame. It was a great thing for the Bucks. So it's the same as that with Giannis, where I feel like you always got to leave the chance for the unknown human element. So it can't be a lock, but I guess the door's closed, just not locked. Like there's nothing I have heard from anyone in or around the team or around him or anything he has said or his actions, JR, that lead me to believe, we'll see him on media day. And I'm sure there will be the one off-season story because there always is. He talks to like someplace in the summer, Greek, American, U.S. based, where he'll say, well, as long as the Bucks want to keep keep trying to win, I'll be here. And if not, I'll go. He says it every summer. So we'll probably see one of those somewhere. And then the news cycle will start all over again. But no, again, yeah. So I guess I can't lock the door. I can't call it a lock, but I would just say, Giannis is in the house with all the Bucks and everybody else is on the sidewalk, like hoping, he'll throw some Halloween candy out there. I don't know. That's maybe a bad analogy, but yeah,
it is tortured, but I'll take it. But it leads me to my next question. The other question that everybody's going to wonder is what happens with Doc Rivers, because he has taken some heat again for not identifying the lineup, I guess, is the more local concern, that the lineup that was most effective that he did deploy in game 5 to success, even though those minute counts were crazy because of the overtime. And, who knew that they'd be so heavily reliant on like Kevin Porter and AJ Green by the end of this season? Crazy journey we have been on this year. But is he the right man for the job? Will he be the guy for the job going forward?
Yeah. So look, we're a few days removed from the season. Typically, if there are, I guess NBA teams started firing coaches in season. As we record this, he is the head coach. I haven't heard much to show that he wouldn't be at this juncture.
Yeah, we'd hear soon, presumably, right?
I don't look. There's a couple small indicators. Well, one loud one, which was Giannis, throwing his weight behind Doc Rivers post game. I had someone say that he endorsed Jason Kidd at one point, and I was like, well, that Giannis was not this Giannis with an endorsement.
That's true.
So I think that in and of itself carries weight. And also my understanding, JR, is, the team, look, we've talked about John Horst's extension. There was never a team release stating that with quotes from ownership. And basically we were told, well, Doc talked about it. So that's fine. So I would find it kind of interesting that they would just let the coach of a guy the GM is about to fire be the official statements on the GM being extended. I think not that means anything, but it'd be a weird look.
Right. Unless Doc Rivers stays in the organization, which is probably if this happens, would be something like that.
Yeah, I feel if there was any movement toward a change in his role, JR, I think it would have been John Horst was not extended and was being introduced as the VP of basketball in Phoenix.
Totally agree.
Or Atlanta. I think it would have been a total redo of everything. So I don't, Doc's not going to get elevated above John, because that would just be untenable. I don't think there's anything below John that Doc Rivers, who used to be a VP of basketball ops in LA, so I feel look, I think I wonder how much the Dame injury affects some of this, JR, because it alters the trajectory of next season.
Mm-hmm.
Giannis knows this. The Bucks know this. It's a $54 million lost sunk cost. And I hate to be cold about that, but it is. There's no disabled player exception. I know fans have wondered that. Again, coldly, it's sort of a standard basketball injury in the view of the league. Torn ACLs, torn Achilles, blown shoulders, broken limbs. They happen. The physical cost of doing business, of playing pro sports. And so a doctor would have to tell the league, this Achilles injury is perhaps career threatening, or it's a 2-year thing. And then the Bucks can start a process. And all I'll go with for fans is Lonzo Ball in Chicago had this rarest and weirdest of knee injuries and pain that they could not diagnose. They didn't know what was going on. He's flying all over the world. And even they couldn't get a disabled player exception. And Lonzo missed years, right? So no disabled player. So, and the reason I say that is because I feel if this was a healthy team, and it flamed out and guys were unhappy, maybe ownership's all right, what's the problem? What can be changed? What can be fixed? Clearly, they have shown. As much as I said that they're a player can't dictate stuff, both of these guys, Edens and Haslam, have shown they will fire coaches. They are not afraid of that. There's no cap. There's no tax on that. Clearly. So I Doc is, and I will look, Doc has his faults, right? I could quibble with a lot of his stuff and question it. At the end of the day, JR, AJ Green got his best chance to prove he's an NBA player under Doc Rivers, right? Kevin Porter Jr. is just about to turn 25, and you can say, oh, he was in Houston and he had a 50-point game and he was like this up-and-coming guy. Well, he was a minimum player that the Bucks signed, and as I've written about JS Online, like really developed since February in a lot of different ways. Andre, I understand, ended up being a frustrating case for Bucks fans. But Andre did start 41 straight games and helped them win a cup title. Andre shot 39% from three-point line in limited reps. Ryan Rollins played under Doc Rivers, like his 22-year-old two-way guy. JR he started every game that Dame missed, except for Game 5. And Ryan Rollins went from who is this two-way guy to a guaranteed deal to now my feeling is
starting point guard in 2025
is they'll do the qualifying offer and he'll be on the team. So like what the weirdest thing happened, like Doc Rivers played young guys and they helped the team win or stay competitive or whatever it may be. Again, we can talk about slow or adjustments or whatever. The end result, JR, were adjustments, were changes. Were lineup there. Now we could talk about how late they were or whatever. They did happen. So even though next year they may go in not feeling like we can win a championship, and Doc Rivers may say, wow, man, that's not really what I signed up for when I came here because it was Dame and Giannis. Dame's hurt. Again, these guys think differently than everyone else. And so does ownership in that way. Ownership has been very patient with these injuries and understanding it's out of their control. So I could see Doc being back with this roster going forward, or parts of this roster going forward, and feeling like with Giannis and JR, look at this offense they ran the last month of the season without Dame. It's centered around Giannis in a way that he really enjoyed. Really enjoyed what they were doing on offense.
Yeah.
If they do that going into next season, Giannis is 45 wins and a triple-double type season, and all of a sudden
MVP.
It's like that Jokic year, JR. Oh, look at Giannis doing what he's doing, taking the Bucks to the 4 seed. Is he the MVP? I'm just saying.
You are planting that seed. You are planting that seed.
So, yeah. So that's a long way to say Doc Rivers could be fired in 4 hours.
Sure.
I do think there's enough there where all the parties involved can be like, you know what, this is still the right move going into, the next summer. And then you sort of reevaluate everything. Doc will have 1 year left on his deal. Dame will be coming back in some capacity from the Achilles. And then you kind of see what happens after that.
I'm curious if how you sort of been talking about it, whether or not this regular season was a success, and the adjustments I think would be something that plays forward. Going 8-0 to close the year, kind of against some lesser opponents, maybe inflates what 48 wins means. But I'm looking at the standings right now, and it strikes me, it kind of goes back to some of the stuff we've said. You've got the Raptors, Nets, and 76ers, the first 3 Eastern Conference teams who didn't even make the play. And all of those teams in this run the Bucks have been on have been either championship winning or championship caliber teams, like elite teams. And here they are not in the playoffs. And that just speaks to the sustained success of the Bucks. You have the Heat, who are in the same boat, that were the 8th seed and went 37-45. Like, they still have a lot of the key pieces. They traded one mid-season, but they, even with those guys coming back, they weren't really able to sustain the way that the Bucks have been able to sustain. And if you think the Bucks are going to win 45 games with just Giannis, I mean, I'd sign up for that. Like, that's maybe not the 4th seed, but that's very, very good. Like, you do see this regular season, I'm gathering, as 48 wins is 48 wins, and that is a successful run, even for a team that's coming down from where they have been the last couple of years.
Yeah, look again. It's Adam Silver likes to call it the parity of opportunity, and these windows are very short. And look, the Celtics are the outlier. Frankly, the Celtics and the Bucks
Yeah.
We're the outliers. This, again, I'll remind people again, since 2018-19, heading into this year, no one had won more games than the Bucks. The Celtics now have passed them because of this regular season. So what are we talking about, right? The Bucks. So again, what does contention and contending mean? It's far different inside that building. And I get why you'll say, oh, the 8 wins at the end of the year are this. It's still 8 wins. It's still 8 wins.
Oh, you're right. No, of course. And one of them was high intensity against Detroit. Like that's a really important win.
It's the same thing, JR, is like when we will rightfully knock them for sleepwalking through the first month of the season and losing a bunch of games to lottery teams. Like they lost those games, but if they paid attention and did the thing, they'd have 50 wins anyway, right? So, and that's I can understand if that's a Doc Rivers issue as well going forward. But yeah, the windows change, and it's about look. Ownership thought John Horst could do this again, and where the Bucks are going is the third generation around Giannis. And what I mean by that is the first generation was Horst figured out how to build around him, right? Bledsoe, obviously Chris was emerging, but like the pieces, right? Brooke Lopez is 3-point shooting big. Bledsoe, Kyle Korver, this 3-point shooter, George Hill, 3-point, right? So that was the first iteration. And then it was, all right, well, we need Drew, right? Maybe we called it a big three. No one ever would have thought Drew was a big three, like nationally. Right. So it was this defensive minded perimeter, again, shooters, though, shooters. The third, this other generation was Dame, right? Like the team realized they were going to take a step back defensively, maybe over the breadth of a season. But again, more shooting, right? I think going forward, Giannis said this in his postgame, JR. He thought the next phase of his growth was this sort of like playmaker, score 30, assist for 12, whatever. Well, they're in the phase. The phase has started. And so what does that look like? And maybe you don't need a stretch 5 like Brooke anymore. You still need shooting, but it's going to look a little different. You're going to ask guys that if Giannis is doing things here, maybe there's more movement and back cutting. And if he's on the, like, it might just look different. So, yeah, I know you started with wins and these teams, like, again, you can't assume stuff. Boston already, like there's reports. It's not even reports. You just look at the math. Boston is trading 2 of those guys, right? Cleveland is already in the second apron. So they are going to have to, now Dan Gilbert has proven with LeBron, he will spend into the tax, but like, this is year 1 of their Cavs window. Next year's year 2. And then guess what's happening in Cleveland? Dudes are getting traded. So the Knicks, same thing. So like, these are these 2-year windows now that the league and the players agreed to institute. And so credit to the Bucks for 7 years of what we can call, or they could call, like true championship contending. But if you're sort of retooling around one of the 2 best players in the world, winning 45 games, selling out the arena, the new hotels going up, people are staying there, the new music venues going up, people are going to the Deer District because basketball is fun downtown Milwaukee. That's okay as they sort of reboot this, because the volatility, JR, of this stuff is really high. And you're just going to see a lot of that, this year, next year, 2 years from now.
Yeah, and you're talking about maybe Cleveland because of the nature of this goes downhill a little bit, or Boston goes downhill a little bit. And what don't they have? They don't have one of the 3 best players in the NBA. But the team that does can actually afford to have several iterations orbiting around him. And that's why John Horst is back. We said that on the last podcast. If they wanted to tear it down and build from scratch, they would have a new GM. They would not have John Horst, whose experience is entirely making things work around Giannis Antetokounmpo. They would not have him in the chair. What is the biggest offseason thing? Thing is such a catch-all, but like, what are the decisions that have to be made that you think are really going to dictate what happens going forward?
That's a great question. It's look, they have money, but it's restricted money with between the cap and the tax. And look, ownership likely isn't going to pay the tax. They've been in it since 2021, spent almost $1 billion in salary and tax for, look, again, results are they haven't won, right? So I think there'll be a little come down in the spending this year. However, it doesn't mean they don't have options. And I think for them, it's sort of recruiting or re-recruiting Gary Trent Jr., Kevin Porter Jr. I think that's their focus, in my opinion, and it was what it should be. Kevin Porter played his first playoff ever. He admitted early he was fast and like it got to him. And then by the end of it, they ran a 2-man game with Kevin Porter Jr. and Giannis Antetokounmpo for KPJ to hit the dagger 17-footer. It was the Chris Middleton elbow jumper, JR. And he hit the front of the rim.
Yeah. Man.
And, but what does that say? Right? It says a lot. Giannis loves playing with them. Kevin loves being here. Look, how do they do that? That's the hard part because the market is going to be tough. The Bucks are going to have a $14 million non-taxpayer exemption to give. Ideally, in their world, they would love to split that and sign Gary Trent and Kevin Porter Jr. to 2-year deals, 1 year with an player option for $7 million or 8 and 6 or whatever the math is.
Yeah.
And why does that matter? Let's go back to Bobby Portis Jr. in 2021, who signed a biannual player exception for 2 years, $10 million, but it was essentially a 1-year, $5 million deal. And why was that important? Because Bobby's here, he plays a year, he opts out, and then you start the process again of now you have bird rights. And what do bird rights mean? It means you can exceed the cap to re-sign your own free agent and not like you can compete with other teams. Like that's how Brooke has been able to stay. That's Chris Middleton has gotten all like extra money because of that. So if they can convince those two guys that's look, I'm sure there's rules that can't handshake stuff, but I think the Bucks have shown if you do the 1+1, we will take care of you going forward. Pat Connaughton, again, they've done this. The only issue is the free market. Did Kevin Porter show enough in his 1 year back from exile, frankly, like to warrant more money than that? I don't know. Gary Trent, you could argue, showed he's a $15 million player again, but he thought that last year and ended up signing in late July for a minimum. So, there's only like a couple teams with cap space, JR. It's crazy this coming year. So I think that's their first. So the question was, what's their priority? I think that's the priority.
Okay.
It's just that it's not fully in their control. Porter, I think, is the focus there because Kevin shown he can get his own shot. He's if not a traditional point guard, he's someone Giannis quickly developed trust with. They have a good chemistry in a short amount of time. Kevin's going to be 25. JR, when was the last time they had a dynamic two-way 25-year-old?
It's like an extra draft pick. I mean, like
so I think Kevin is like if they're going to have to make a choice, in my opinion, they will play the roulette game of shooters and Gary's right, like and Kevin, like I think Kevin's the one. It's just a matter of how does that play out. Because I think they found something there and it fit and it worked and he bought in and was great for them. And again, they ran him to put the dagger in it. And what I'll say going forward, again, JR, think about this team. AJ's 26. Gary's 26. Ryan Rollins is going to be 23. Kevin Porter is going to be 25. Yeah. Bobby is a couple months younger than Giannis. He just turned 30.
Suddenly it's a young team.
There's those 5 guys who played, like Giannis is the old guy. So like, I understand the frustration, but again, you have to look at how they view competing and contending differently. If all those guys are back, or two of the three, or whatever it may be, you see the turn, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, like if Gary escapes because he's earned a great new deal, Gary Trent almost had a career 3-point shooting season. Torian Prince had a career 3-point shooting season. Guess what? Malik Beasley had a career point. George Hill, Drew Holiday. Like you will find guys who will have the best 3-point shooting years of their lives around Giannis. So, but Gary, I think, proved he's got that clutch gene. I understand he dropped the ball, but again, It was his first playoff in like 5 years. And so you saw the growing pains, but also guys who weren't afraid and did hit big shots. It's not like they missed a bunch of shots, JR, right? Like they just had some breakdowns, and that stuff happens. So I think going forward, the priority are those two guards, shade KPJ a little more. And then after that, you're kind of filling out, the rest as they have. But they've got more options. They also a $7 million sign and trade exception from the Chris Middleton deal. What does that mean? Real quick. They have $7 million available. Doesn't seem like a lot, right? Well, what that means is, let's say Joe Smith, well, that used to be a player, JR Radcliffe.
Yeah, there we go.
This big man they want to sign, but they can't, right? So Atlanta signed JR Radcliffe to a 4-year deal, but the first year is $7.2 million.
Sure.
You can trade him to the Bucks, and the Bucks can send out either a Pat and a pick or whatever the trade is. And then as long as it's 7.2 million there so or under in the first year, the rest of the deal goes out. And the Kings did this with Jonas Valanciunas for like $9 million, in that their machination of the trade. So there are options there, JR, that again, it's not sexy. It's not fun to talk about on that bigger level of like Giannis playing somewhere else. These are like real dudes. And John Horst has shown he may not have all the great drafting track record, but it's kind of hard to argue with the pro personnel stuff. I think he's had way more hits than Jay Crowder's. You know what I mean? Like, and so I think that's where they have to be really good again. And going forward, it just kind of gives them a lot of flexibility, or at least more flexibility than many, many years past.
A couple straight thoughts there. Malik Beasley, I believe, also fumbled the ball out of bounds at the end for the Pistons in Game 6 against the Knicks. Just a weird serendipitous thing, unfortunately. It would have been a long shot, but also Gary Trent being 26 years old. I just can't compute that. He just isn't 26. Like you hear him talk, you see how he plays. Like that's not a 26-year-old man. The hairline, all of it. And I Googled it again. I don't think of him as a long-term guy in Milwaukee. So I never really I think encoded in my brain how young he is and how young this team is. We think of it as an old team because it's got Brooke and had Chris and, obviously Dame and Giannis is in his 30s now. So like you think, it's not great. But I also was looking up Denver's draft history because I was going to try to compare a team that has, not given up a lot of draft picks. And like, maybe they also have had a bad history. They've been okay though. They got Bones Highland, Christian Braun, Michael Porter.
Are they okay? Like,
well, I would not want to be this draft. I would not want that. I'm comparing it to the Bucks and like, trying to see like, can you, if you're the Bucks, when you're always picking in the 20s and always trading, can you actually have a good draft track record? I don't think the answer is really yes. Maybe Denver has a leg up in that regard. The 2031 draft pick, we're gonna wrap this up here, but that 2031 draft pick is going to be available for trade, and they love trading them draft picks. They're just now paying the piper for the Drew Holiday trade, so I don't know if that 2031 is going to be with the Bucks for long. But do you think they have reached a point now where they can see? I mean, that'll be 6 years from now. Giannis will be, if he's still a Buck, he'll be in the latter stages of his career. Yeah. So will they now start hanging on to those picks? Will they now start preparing for that future, or are those still assets that are going to be moved?
Yeah, so it is interesting. That's the last. You're right. It's the last sort of bit of powder in the the musket, to go back 200 years.
I
I know
love it.
every team is going to want that pick because, again, everyone thinks Giannis is being traded, or even if he isn't traded, you're right, JR, he'll be not an old man, but because he says he's an old man now, so I don't know what he would consider himself at 38 years old.
I spiritually feel that, though. I get it.
Yeah.
Kids, man.
It's fascinating. I don't see a deal out there that would be worth them moving that at all, because, again, the landscape has changed, even from the Dame trade. Like, you're only moving that pick or first rounders to get real guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, like, but it's all money based now. Like honestly, Damian would have to be part of a deal like that in a way, because you're absorbing salary for like a younger, better, whatever you wanted to call it, right? Like, and even then, like, let's say Damian was healthy and he was like, you know what, this didn't work. I tried for 2 years. The Bucks like, yeah, we tried. I don't even know if you'd have to exchange first round picks for like guys like that. Like look what the Bulls did for Zach LaVine. They got a pick, but it was their pick back. So like, it wasn't even anything. Kevin Durant,
the Nets did the same thing. They got their picks back.
Kevin Durant moving this summer, if he does, will probably just be for players or some like ancillary stuff. Like, you're not going to see some team sending Phoenix unprotected first for Kevin Durant anymore, right? Like, if the Celtics have to trade Drew or Kristaps Porzingis, like, maybe somewhere there's like this, like, I just don't see the first round pick thing, because honestly, JR, like, 4 teams control like 80% of the draft over the next 5 years. So unless Houston or Oklahoma City decides to like trade everything, it just seems like the picks, not that they're devalued, but I don't know if you need to do that. So people are going to call, and maybe it's John Horst. This is one thing for sure. You always got to be like, John Horst can pull this rabbit, and in 3 weeks or in July, JR, we're talking about, I don't know, name like some amazing all-star that's suddenly playing for the Bucks because they traded this 31 unprotected first. But I think they hang on to it, in my view, unless it's one of those deals where they're like, oh my God, how do we pass this up? All we got to do is trade this pick, and I mean, they really don't have any money, so it'd be like Kyle Kuzma and Pat Connaughton. But what are we talking about? Like, asset, the cupboard's really bare that way.
Yeah.
So, and they're not trading Dame now. Even if they thought that could be on the table, if he thought that could be on the table, they're not going to trade Giannis. So I think that pick is there, and there's nothing wrong with that, because that's many years from now, and it gives them that asset to continue to build. And again, JR, if they're not under the tax or the apron, then that 32 becomes available and a second round pick. And like, it's a thing that, look, Wes Edens told me last year, JR, I know you want to wrap this up, but to give people a thought, again, back to, let's full circle it, competitive, what does contending mean? Wes said, look at Miami. This paraphrasing, look at Miami. He's like, they have been competitive for a decade and have been to multiple NBA finals with different versions of their cast. They don't tank. Things break right. And look, they undercut Giannis. Jimmy got hot. They go to a final. Had every chance to win, right? Things, they were an 8 seed, a play-in, right? So now this is the year Miami took a dump, right? But it for the most part, they have been, and I'd argue if the thing with Jimmy and Pat worked out, it's a different, right?
Yeah.
So the 31 pick and competitiveness, like, I don't think these owners really care about that stuff. I think if the deal's there to be made and it makes sense and they feel good about it, I think they would do it. It just seems like in this format, current construct, JR, the 31 pick, I think, can just be saved as ammunition for a trade deadline or the next summer as time goes on. I think they're just going to retool with the money and the flexibility they have this summer.
Yeah. I think it's sort of an overarching thesis. The NFL draft was just in Green Bay, as we all know. And I think that draft has become so commonplace as like the template for how the draft works, how teams can get better through the draft.
Yeah.
And it is just such a different environment in other sports leagues. I mean, certainly in baseball and hockey, where the guys you draft aren't even like key contributors for years, but it just in basketball, like, again, the Spurs, even with Victor, and because they've had some injury stuff, like they've been a bad team the last 2 years. They've drafted well, and they still haven't reaped the benefits. Now they will, but it is not a guarantee that, oh, if you just trade Giannis for like draft picks and future considerations, you're gonna. It doesn't compute the way that it might for an NFL team or a baseball team, even like if you're trading young guys for prospects. It's not the same thing. It's not gonna work.
Again, what does competitive mean?
Yeah.
The Houston Rockets, everyone's loving Houston, right? The last time they were in a conference final, because that's the bar, apparently, is 2017, 2018, JR. 4 head coaches ago. 3 head coaches.
That's crazy.
Again, what did I say with San Antonio? Same time frame. Conference. Like, you are better off, and I mentioned this in my story about Giannis and the offense. You're better off doing the Golden State thing. We've got that dude.
Yeah.
Okay, things went wrong. Money, guys got old. People got hurt. What did the Warriors do? Kevin Durant left. Klay Thompson blew out all of his ligaments. Then Steph got hurt, broke a wrist, and they ended up in the lottery. And then in 2 years, they won another title.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And
because they still had Steph.
Because they still had that guy. And where are they at now? Like, I understand it's not sexy. They're not winning 67 games, but what does competitive mean? They were able to reboot, get to a point where they could get Jimmy Butler for like no picks, right? Because that's the current climate. Like it's there for Milwaukee, JR. It's just one of those things where, for whatever reason, Giannis is the guy that everyone in the basketball world thinks can't do it here. And almost that reason alone, JR, anyone to tell that guy what to do? You think
he's going to prove it?
You think he is just going to walk into the pejorative, your pre-constructive narrative on how his career is going to go?
Yeah.
So anyway, it's the draft. You're right. I'm sorry, I interrupted your thought on the draft, but it's just one of those things, again, to remind folks, like, oh, look at these teams. Look at these teams. Well, guess what? They're also getting out and knocked out as soon or more quickly than the team you're frustrated with. So just, it's try to keep a little perspective on some of that.
Yeah, that's true. Very fun conversation. We'll probably have more. There's certainly going to be some offseason developments. The Point Forward podcast will be back in very short order, I have to think, but we'll take a little bit of a break here as the rest of the playoffs unfold. Jim Owczarski, thank you for joining me, sir. We'll talk to you again very soon.
Yeah, very soon.